Yes, guys. I think I'm live. Let's do the old phone checkaroo just to see if I'm with you. I am so disorganized today. That's the first thing I want to say. This is so spontaneous. I did say in the fashion studio that I'd be going live. Didn't give you guys a time. So whoever joins me, fab. Nice surprise. But yeah, I still want to bring you a good workshop. I still want to make sure that I'm giving you a nugget of value. I do apologise if I didn't warn you of this. I do have other workshops planned for the rest of the month, so I'm going to get those scheduled and get those up so that you guys have some notice. Again, I asked over in the Digital Pattern Library Fashion Studio what times would suit everybody, and evidently I've ignored every single answer by coming on at this time. Oh my god, Inga's made it. See, that is what an impromptu live does, Inga. It makes you join me. Join me on time. But yeah, if you do have a preference for times for me to do these lives, then let me know in the comments. I would love to do them more so in the day than the evening, but as long as I'm doing them and as long as I'm serving you, then that's fine, so you let me know. I'm on new internet today, guys. You can't quite see my face just yet, just my gangly fingers, but you should be seeing me in a bit of a better video, a bit better HD. Dorothy, yes, you are the only one who said you'd prefer them in the evening. So Dorothy, this is for you. Right, anyway, me rambling. You can tell I'm hungry and I need dinner. So, today I'm just going to talk through two pattern cutting basics, alright guys? I'm just going to run through seam allowance, adding seam allowance, and something called walking a pattern, which is what we do to make sure that everything's aligned, to check our notches. Anna Marie, I am loving the shock in the comments. I think we're all in a state of disbelief here. Maybe, what's the time? Maybe 5 to 6 is it, guys. Maybe I need to push it back later rather than bring it forward into the day. But I am so chuffed you're with me. So, I'm just going to trace around this block here. What this line is, if anybody was here for the one-piece sleeve to raglan tutorial, is that technique just on a big full-size pattern. So if you missed that, head on over to the fashion studio, or I've started uploading all of these workshops on YouTube as well. However, my fashion studio people are who get to see it first and get all the good stuff. So if you're wondering what this is, that is turning a sleeve into a raglan, and that has been explained previously. It's a little bit more intermediate than what we're going to cover today, which is just the basics. So I'm just going to trace off round here. This is just an original tee. It's just a kind of basic bodice type thing. Let me know in the comments what you guys have gotten up to. How has your day been? How has your hump day been? We're in the middle of the week already. We're in October. October. Nobody panic, but we're in October. How on earth has this happened? Just draw my table. Nice. So I've just drawn around the armhole here. Shoulder, neckline, just so that you kind of, let me move this in a bit. Neckline, and then what am I working? I'm working with the back today, and then centre back. Quick way to see that you're working with the back, which I didn't even notice then, is the 2 notches, okay? So if you have 1 notch on a pattern, it usually means it's the front piece. If we notch it with 2, it just helps us quickly identify what side of the pattern we're working with, front or back. So, I have just drawn around that. Now, add in seam allowance. Standard seam allowance, if you're working with an open seam, a plain seam, is about 1 centimetre, okay? So I'm going to do that along the, I'm going to do it along the armhole actually. I'm going to show you how I add seam allowance on a curve using a Pattern Master. Again, if you have seen the Pattern Master Basics tutorial, this kind of covers that in more depth. You can either use the curved part of the Pattern Master here, like so, and I'm just adding 1 centimetre. Or you can use the straight edge and kind of pivot it with you as you go round a curve. They're just 2 different ways to do curves. I know Pattern Master veterans who refuse to use the curve on a Pattern Master. They'll only ever do it with the straight line because I've been told they find it more accurate. Each to their own. I'm more than happy with the curve, as long as you're just, when you're using a Pattern Master, I don't know if my head's going to get in the way here, but you can see my shadow. Ooh. if you get over it so that you're looking directly down at these lines, that's how you get accurate. If you're stood back, see my shadow disappear, if you're stood back looking at an angle, you're obviously not going to see the accuracy that you're trying to achieve. So if you get your head nice and over it, which is why if you have a pattern cutting table, try and lift it and make it a bit higher, because your lower back can otherwise kill. Anyway, friends, so 1 centimetre add in a seam allowance here is for your plain seam. It's for your standard open seam. If you wanted to finish that in a high-end way, that would be bias binding, that kind of thing. You'd want to have a really nice, neat finish on the edge on that. This is a t-shirt, so we'd probably just overlock it together, but kind of ignore that for now. If we're coming up to the shoulder, say I wanted to do a French seam, you want to work with at least 1.5, okay? So a French seam is 1.5 centimetres. I do have a fashion file pack on seams explaining the basics to you, but if you have a pattern, now I'm going to shoot myself in the foot here. Let me think of one of my own patterns. I think all of my patterns come with 1.5 centimetre seam allowance included already. However, some of the instructions say to just do an open seam. Because they have 1.5 centimetres, you could do French seams if you wanted to. That could be accounted for. So if you wanted to kind of up the quality of your sewing make with one of my patterns, then you could do a French seam and still follow the instructions accordingly. If you have a pattern that has just 1 centimetre on it, and then you wanted to do a French seam, you would just need to add 0.5 at least. If it's your first time doing a French seam, go for 2 centimetres. Give yourself the wiggle room to experiment with it. And, you know, I'm not saying you're going to make errors, but at least you're giving yourself the wiggle room to make errors. Another reason you would do even bigger seam allowance is for fit issues. So if you were drafting up a pattern and it was your first time going to fit it, we'd rather more seam allowance so that we can take it in than it be too tight and cause problems trying to take it out, because you're going to have to either redraft and recut your pattern, or you're going to have to insert fabric and it just becomes a bit of a Frankenstein mess. So your seam allowance, this is obviously your stitch line here, and your seam allowance is everything beyond that. So you could go as big as you like. You could even make that a design feature. When we come to necklines, please let me know if you can see this, guys. I usually demonstrate in pen. I do apologise. As I say, today's a bit of a spontaneous one. Yes, Kirsty! Guys, I feel like my squad's here with me. I feel like we're a strong team today. So I'm working with the neckline here. Now, sometimes, just like the measurement tutorial, you want to bear in mind the end use of the garment. And the neckline, if we were doing a shirt or something like that, and it was just a stand-up collar, it didn't have the collary bit on it, it was just the collar stand, then you might just want to have a 0.5 centimetre seam allowance. Now the reason being is you'd want to reduce bulk around the neckline, okay? We'd want to make that as comfortable for the wearer as possible. We'd want to make that as refined as possible around the neckline. And so areas like that, you may only want to use a 0.5 centimetre seam allowance. So they're the kind of basic rules. Obviously, as the designer, you can decide what you want to do. Consider how you want to finish your seams. With woven seams, you either want to do a flat felled seam. We've just gone and done a workshop on that. You want to do a French seam. French seams are great for lightweight fabrics, chiffons, anything like that with a level of translucency, because as you can see through it, you can see how beautifully enclosed that seam is. Again, if you want to play around with different weights of fabric in your fashion file pack and see how different those seams look, that would be a really, really good practice to do. I'm just going to rub out this line here because now I'm going to show you how to walk the pattern. If anybody has any questions on seams, do let me know. It is a basic kind of workshop today, and that's not to detract from anyone if you do have a question. There's no stupid questions. I just think we went a bit crazy with the raglan to one-piece sleeve. And it's always nice to come back and recap on the basics. So, to walk your pattern, you do this in order to align everything, in order to check that your pattern is matched. And sometimes when you walk your pattern, for example, trousers, I'll just show you now. So this is the, let me get this right, this notch here is the shoulder seam, okay? And it's also the sleeve head. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna try and make sure you can see what I'm doing. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna align the notch to the shoulder seam there. And I want to start pivoting the pattern, okay, along the seam line. This pattern here does not have seam allowance on it. So this would be the stitch line and this would be the stitch line, okay? Within that seam allowance, we're going to start pivoting it around on the pattern. And this is called walking the pattern. And when we get up to the notches, whoop, let me just pull this back so we're not getting away. Can you see how these don't line up? So when you're walking your pattern, that is what it's to check, okay? Now with sleeves, you might have a bit of ease in the sleeve head. With trousers, the front trouser pattern to the back trouser pattern might be a little bit off with notches to account for ease, okay? Because the back of the trouser is gonna sometimes be a little bit longer to account for your rear, to account for the bum that has a bit more volume. And so the back trouser pattern can sometimes be a little bit longer to account for that. So it's understanding when your ease comes in. So if that has ease, we should, if we come from this way and walk the pattern, yeah, nope, not aligning. But can you see, can you understand what I'm saying in terms of walking your pattern? So had I not chosen a stupid bloody pattern to use, sorry guys, then your notches would align, okay? So if you wanted to match your side seams, ooh, I was trying to use a smaller pattern piece so that you could see what I'm doing, because anything bigger is a bit too big to show you. So let's use these by here. Let me know if you can see what I'm doing. So this is my side seam here, okay? And if we were walking the pattern, focus. Whoop. Can we see? Are we in focus? Oh, we're having a bit of a mare today, guys. It's all gone Pete Tong. Hello? Okay, there we are. I think I'm back. Right, so if we were walking the pattern on this way, again, you would butt up the edges and you would start to pivot them down until your notch is matched by here. Whoop. And then you would start pivoting your pattern down. There is a technique to do this on Adobe Illustrator. There we go. So if we start up here and we would start pivoting our pattern, butting it against the seam, pivoting it down, the notches match, and then we would pivot again down to the end, okay? And that's how you would walk it. And then let's try on here. And we would just start butting it to the end, whoop, pivoting it around. There we go. And then they wouldn't match up by here. And this is how you just walk your pattern, check that it's all aligned. We want to make sure that all of our things line up. So you do the same for your seam lines. And then, sorry, I've got another pattern piece underneath there. Let's move that away. So that matches up by here. And then if I start pivoting it back again, without shifting and cheating with the pattern, and you're just kind of pivoting it around, okay? And then we match up with the notches here. Does that make sense? I've had a bit of a faff there today, guys. So if you print out your patterns, anything like that, before you cut them out, you want to walk your patterns. If you're creating your own patterns, you want to walk your patterns. You want to check all your seams. Again, with sleeves and with some trouser legs, there is ease to account for. So it's just a case of making sure that everything is aligned. I think I'm going to record a Adobe Illustrator tutorial as well and show you how to do it with digital patterns, because there's a really, really easy, simple method there. I'm sorry I've been a bit higgledy-piggledy today, guys. This is probably the one I've been the most unprepared for because I've just been running around all over the place today. But as always, if you have any recommendations, if you have any suggestions or requests for various workshops, then do let me know. Shall I let you know what I have lined up for the rest of the month? I've got, there's definitely another pattern tutorial. Okay, so I'm going to give you an Adobe Illustrator introduction for anybody out there who wants to get into kind of technical flats on the computer. We've already done hand-drawn technical flats. I'm going to walk through a sewing toolkit. So you know I did the Pattern Master, Tools of the Trade. I'm going to go through a sewing toolkit. And then I'm also going to do reading patterns and what you need, the kind of information you must include on your pattern each time to make sure that if you sent it to anyone around the world, they'd understand how to construct it, how to make it, and the kind of markings that we have to put on the patterns. If you're in the Draping 101 class, then that's kind of already in there for you guys. But we'll have a quick touch up on that as a live workshop. So any questions, again, any suggestions or anything like that, then do let me know. Sorry I've been a bit all over the place today, guys. Thank you ever so much for joining me. I hope you're all well, and I will catch you in the fashion studio later today and tomorrow. Speak to you soon, guys. Have a lovely, lovely evening and take care. Love you all.